This is This Week in Law's third presidential election. We were around for the 2008 election and the 2012 election. And we've seen a lot of we've had a lot of discussions, too, about candidates' use of music. That's always a controversial way that intellectual property law intersects with campaigns, and rights holders get up in arms about using works without their permission. The names and likenesses of the candidates can come into play, too, as they're being parodied, lampooned, that we talked about in a show a while ago now, but still in the course of this campaign. Victor, if you can show us a name and likeness of, there's the name and likeness I wanted to talk about right now, and then we'll move on. Victor, it's over in the right column, to talk about other ones. So what I've been seeing this time, and I haven't seen in any of the elections that we've covered yet, is people using the two major party candidates' name and likeness in the service of selling real estate. So this one actually wound up on my front gate. Victor just showed you one that was a billboard. Realtors far and wide seem to have gotten the idea that if people are actually considering moving to Canada because of their throwing up their hands with the current election cycle, that they can provide those services for you to sell your home. I get the feeling it's more tongue-in-cheek than serious, but still, the candidate, this is, and I'm sure, unauthorized use of the candidate's name and likenesses, but it's probably not the most egregious one. And now, Victor, you can show, I think there was a show where we showed a number of Donald Trump products, and the one that sticks with me and probably sticks in the memory of many of our listeners is the one that we're showing you now, which is a thing that is supposed to be utilized not just as a statue, but for other purposes. If you're just listening to the audio, sorry. I don't know that I'm actually, maybe I already said on the prior show where we covered this, the BP word that I am loath to actually utter now.
Denise, I told my mom to watch this show. Are you serious? So embarrassing.
It could very well be a paperweight on your desk.
Okay.
In the format of Donald Trump. But once again, an unauthorized use of the candidate's name and likeness. What do you guys think about the realtors' innovation here, Mike?
Oh, I think it's great. Of course, as you pointed out, typically the rule is you can't use somebody else's name, image, or likeness for purposes of advertising a commercial product or service. Uh-huh. And that's exactly what's going on here. In one sense, these images are being used to advertise somebody's real estate services that they want to provide to the public. But in another sense, there's a political statement involved here, a very strong one, obviously, which is, both Donald Trump and Hilary Clinton are disliked by the electorate to a large extent. People seem to be disgruntled about this election cycle for obvious and very good reasons. And so these realtors are using, the statement, are you moving to Canada, to kind of signify that, are you disgusted with the political process here? Are you ready to get out of the country? And so in that sense, it's clearly got a double entendre here with a pretty healthy dose of political overtones associated with it. So I think it's great. It's funny. We see, there's lots of right of publicity cases out there, certainly involving rock stars and other people that are famous. But when it comes to political figures, at least as far as I know, the law is there's not as many decisions or as many cases involving political figures, because I think to a large extent they don't want to try to challenge their uses that are being made by the public, and probably to a large extent because these uses have political overtones associated with them. And of course, if there's one sacred cow when it comes to First Amendment protection, it's certainly being able to express yourself with respect to the politics of the country. So I'd contrast, or I'd point out one thing about the images both that you showed and that Victor showed, the billboard. You might be immune, or you might be successfully able to argue that your use of their images do not violate either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump's rights, right of publicity. But that's a separate issue from the copyright issue. Remember that those images would be protected by copyright. I think the one in particular, true, Denise, that you showed, I've seen those exact same images like on MSNBC. Mm-hmm. So someone or something, some entity presumably owns the copyright in those images, and that wouldn't necessarily give you the right to reproduce those images from a copyright perspective on a billboard or flyer or what have you. So there's really two different rights at issue. The right of publicity one, I think, is probably more tilted in favor of the publisher, but then you've got the copyright issue, which is a little bit different issue.
Right. Same thing could be true of the not paperweight, that it came from some other copyrighted image.
Very true.
Evan, any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I agree with, I think ultimately I agree with pretty much everything you said, Mike, because that's a very pragmatic view. But, just for the purposes of discussing and analyzing things, because that's what we do around here, I could suggest that one way that you could slaughter the sacred cow of this political speech, to use your term, calling this protection of political speech a sacred cow being really important. One way to get at that would be to say this is not a political statement. This is a purely commercial statement. Sure, it's political in its in the indicia of the mode of communication, but there's no political statement about this. This guy doesn't want to do anything but sell real estate or help people selling real estate. So I think if you get you look at it from that way, we treat it with a different level of scrutiny. Commercial speech is not entitled to the same constitutional protections as political speech is. And then alongside with that, sort of maybe just by analogy or just by comparison or just, falling into the same region of the universe, there's this idea of special protections for the identities of presidents, and granted, neither of these people are president yet, but special protections for the identity of presidents' name, images, and likenesses being used for commercial purposes as a trademark. There's a special provision in the Lanham Act, which is the federal trademark statute. And being here where I am in the land of Lincoln, where every other commercial enterprise is Lincoln something, it has the silhouette of Abraham Lincoln on it. We become aware of this. But I think what the essence of what that provision of the Lanham Act says, and I didn't research it preparing for our talk today, this is just sort of going by memory here, is that you can't use the name, image, or likeness or whatever of a living president so long as, and I can say this because all presidents have been males, as long as his spouse is still living. So don't quote me on this. Again, I didn't research this, but I think now that Nancy Reagan is dead, perhaps Ronald Reagan's image is more available now for trademark usage. Again, don't go out and launch a business calling it Ronald Reagan carpet cleaning or anything like that until you consult with a lawyer. But there's something about, right? Am I just making this up, or does this ring any bells with the two of you? That provision in the Lanham Act that protects the living presidents as long as their spouse is still living, or did I just dream that?
I'm deferring to trademark lawyer Mike on this one.
No, you're exactly right. That provision is in the Lanham Act. I can't recall, though, Evan, if that is a prohibition against the use of name, image, or likeness of a president or a former president, or if it's simply just it precludes registration of a mark containing the name, image, or likeness. I don't recall.
Yeah, that's an important distinction.
Yeah, right. So Evan's absolutely right that this is commercial speech. It clearly is. they are trying to sell their services to the end users. But the thing that makes this particularly powerful and has the political overtones associated with it is the use of the images themselves. If you just took that billboard and said, "Moving to Canada, call me, I want to sell your home," that would be a very mundane, very unmemorable statement, and it really wouldn't have much political overtones associated with it at all. But once you add the images of the two presidential candidates, it completely transforms the meaning of the ad, and it makes it much more political in nature. And the advertiser or the real estate agent is really trying to connect with other disgruntled people in the electorate. So I think it's really interesting. I've seen several of these. I've never seen anything like this before that I can recall. And the first time I saw one was just a few weeks ago. But since I noticed that first one, I've seen several other ones, including the ones we've been talking about today. So,
right.